episode 50 of the Bithell Games Podcast. I'm Alexander Slawinski.
And I'm Mike Bithell.
Each week we talk games, what it's like to make games, and the random stuff we don't find time to talk about because we are playing and or making games. Show notes, episode 50. Thank you.
That's good, isn't it?
Thank you.
I do like that. It's so good. They made you be a bit musical with the show notes, which I liked.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you've picked up EarthShape, we'd appreciate if you could post a lovely 5-star review for that app. It makes a huge difference on mobile.
It really does. It really does.
It so does. We've also updated the game to add really pretty snow. It's so pretty.
It is rather pretty, isn't it? There was a lot of debate about the speed at which that snow should fall, the exact amount it should swirl. It's good. It's good.
Is that going to be in the what's happening at the studio, or is that way too detailed?
It will get very boring very quickly, I think, for the audience. After last week's episode where I talked for like half an hour about hands in walls, I think we'll give them an easier one today.
Snow falling to the ground. It's just the thing that I find most impressive about that whole snow thing.
Sure.
Is it comes down so gently, but with this ease, and then it hits the ground and it stays on the ground. It doesn't just fall through the ground and it's there long enough that it just gives you that comfortable feeling.
That was a 15-minute conversation, that one, because that's one of those things that it's not ridiculously expensive to do, but every snow particle, making it stop at the right point and just stay there. Yeah, that was one we had to it's the kind of conversation where you're like, okay, so if we have 25% less snowballs, we can make them stay on the ground for a bit. Okay, let's do it.
So yes, if you pick up Daydream, please pick up EarthShape, and then leave a lovely review. I can't stress that enough. It really helps. What are you playing?
I've just started, and I'm only I'd say probably about 45 minutes in. My plan is to get a lot more time in this weekend. Dishonored 2. Did you play the original?
I did.
I bounced off it a bit. With the first one, I played it, I want to say about 4 or 5 environments through, and then I can't remember why. I've got a feeling another game came out. That's usually the story for me, but I never completed the first Dishonored. So
the first Dishonored for me is almost like it felt like a prologue. Like it was very, I don't like using the term short, but it was not a very long experience.
Okay. Oh, maybe I got further than I thought I did then.
Yeah, no, you probably were at the end. You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
So it introduced the world, but it's so weird because for me, you know how when you're watching a movie and they talk about something random and you go, oh, okay, that's going to be a set piece later on in the movie, right? If a cutaway goes to a gun.
What's that? You used to take gymnastic lessons.
Right, exactly. And then suddenly, 2/3 of the movie splits and kicking raptors off of
Oh, I'm glad you got the reference. That makes me very happy. We're connecting, you and I, Alexander. This is good. 50 episodes is all it took.
So the thing about Dishonored, the original Dishonored, is I felt it broke that expectation because they talk about this world and they talk about these other places and they talk about the way the whales work and all these things. And so you expect in the original Dishonored that there's going to be something in a whale factory. You expect there's just these things that they talk about, and then when those things don't happen, you're kind of like, oh.
That world build. So for you, the world building, it almost sounds like, and it's a weird thing to say, but the world building went too far. It was defining a game that was beyond the scope of the game. Is what you're saying. It's really interesting because that was the thing. So with the first Dishonored, I loved all the lore. I loved the story stuff. I loved the artwork was incredible. I actually had dinner at some point with the guy because it's the guy who did Half-Life 2 as well, City 17. So it's really great kind of art direction on the project, and just great. And I'm also a big fan of that kind of that Harvey Smith style design. The Deus Exy stuff, the old Oh, goodness me, Looking Glass stuff. So like Thief as well. So yeah, Dishonored 1 should have been my game of that year. I can't remember why I dropped off it. I'm going to have to go back because they re-released it, didn't they? They did a PS4 release, so I'll go and grab that and play that again. But yeah, Dishonored, so on to Dishonored 2. So it's really good. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's it's charmingly old-fashioned, and it's interesting what you say about the story stuff. Kind of goes through to the gameplay. It's funny. It puts you at the start of the game, puts you in a room, puts you in this. You're for various plot reasons you're locked in a room and you have to get out. It's, really good classic setup to a game. And it's that weird thing. The game I'd played before it was Watch Dogs 2, which is very kind of Ubisoft, very straightforward design, very modern in its design. And Dishonored 2, I had to get used to the idea that there were going to be interactions in that world that didn't do anything of use. like there's like a globe in the corner and you can press a button to spin it, and the character talks a bit about the world of the game. It's great, really nice world building stuff, really fun.
So now, is this, no matter if you start, I don't even know, like, do you start as Corvo? Who was you
make that decision kind of in the open? No, you make that decision very quickly in the opening cutscene. Okay. I don't know how much difference there is. I can see the little narrative designer in me is like, I can see how this would be reframed as a Corvo mission. I'm playing as Emily. Because my rule with games is, if I'm given an option, I'll take the option that makes the game least like other games. That's my usual rule. So with Watch Dogs, I played it stealthy because there's not many stealth open world games. With this one, I'll play as Emily because there's not many, action games with a female protagonist. So it's not a big political statement. It's just I want the most diverse experience of different, interesting kinds of gameplay and story. And also, to be honest, she seems like the main character. It's a really, in terms of like the opening cutscene, she's the bloody queen that's being usurped. It makes perfect sense. She's the main character. Corvo,
well, not knowing anything about Dishonored 2, Dishonored 1 basically telegraphs the entire time that she's gonna be the protagonist of the next game.
I understand. I get the marketing conversation that probably led to Corvo also being a playable character. I get that. And you know what? I might be being massively unfair. I need to play as Corvo to have an opinion, really, but it feels like logically it's her story. It's about her being, trying to get her throne back. It makes sense. To play as her. So anyway, but you're put in this room and there's all these, there's this globe you can interact with. There's a little typewriter that's really cute that you can play with. And I was pressing these going, I wonder what's this doing? Is this making a noise? Is this distracting a guard? Is this a hidden compartment where there's something for me to pick up? And it took me a good 5 minutes of circling this room going, it's just a thing in a video game. Remember when they did that? It's, remember when toilets flushed in games? Had no gameplay mechanic associated.
Toilets flushing.
and that's so that was really cool. So once I'd gotten into that kind of that old school rhythm, it feels great. It plays well. I love what they're doing on the console, the controller mechanic. So the way they use, I can't remember if this was how the first game was, but swords are mapped to your right triggers, guns are mapped to your left. There's blocking, there's parrying. It's almost, because I'm a stealth fan, so I'm trying to play it quietly. I'm already getting that feeling. I remember this being a problem with Dishonored 1, where I know there's all these cool things that I'm not playing with because they're noisy. And I'm almost at the point where I'm like, I might play this game a bit less worried about being absolutely perfect stealth gameplay. I might dabble in other things. But yeah, it's so far so good. It's still got that great style. It's telling its story well. I think as well there's something plucky about it. I don't know, this is, again, might be unfair. It's got amazing art direction, but it's the engine stuff is not, it definitely hasn't got that level of AAA mega polish that you see in the big AAA titles. It has that feel of being slightly less expensive, and that gives it a charm. That gives it a thing of no, I want this game to do well. I want this experience to be cool because I can tell it's a more personally created game, and that always kind of works for me in a pretentious way, maybe, but I love that. So no, I'm having a really good time with it so far. Like I said, I've not got very far into it, but so far so good. And I need to find out who the actress playing Emily is, because she's great. I've got a feeling she's someone, isn't she? I think she's someone who's been in other stuff.
don't know. She was. I mean, I don't know if it's the same actress even from the first one, but she was good in the first. I mean,
she's a little girl in the first one, isn't she? So here she's I think she's meant to be 18, or she's a young adult.
It's an incredibly well crafted world, and like you said, it has its charm. It's the type of world that feels like an incredible, like so much thought went into it that, like I said, in the first one it kind of just bled out, and so expecting
I'm
things.
okay with that. I mean, and it's a really interesting point you raised at the start of this chat, like in terms of like how far do you go with your greater world building. I know it was a complaint Volume got, wasn't it? It was because we did a lot of story stuff that was kind of pointing outwards from the game, and you weren't experiencing it, but for us, we were doing it in like text logs and stuff, which is not as interesting maybe as all the awesome stuff that Dishonored does.
If only we had a couple more million to make those cutscenes.
1 million would have been great, But yeah, so I think there was a I do think that's an interesting challenge. I would say though that I personally like.
Sorry, I'm just thinking. Well, maybe we could go back and have like a cutscene Kickstarter, and then just
Volume substance. That would be that'd be cool. Someone pointed out to me on Twitter, just to completely continue this distraction. Someone said to me on Twitter, "So is Volume Coda Volume VR missions?" And I was like, "That's brilliant. That's we should have called it that, frankly." That would have been the perfect title for it.
But no, it's interesting because for me, there's a difference between, you took gymnastics as a kid and many Bothans died to get these plans.
Yeah.
One of them is clearly pointing to, and I don't know if I should probably research this before I ever bring it up again, but the difference between that weird line that creates an expectation and the one that's a throwaway line that some essentially fanfic gets created around nowadays.
Or prequel movies.
Right.
I think the difference is repetition, if I'm honest. That's the thing that for me, like, when you see it in an action movie, you very rarely see that setup of, you're a gymnast. They usually do that 2 or 3 times. Like they'll pepper it in. And I think that's maybe why that whale thing, for example, in the first Dishonored, what happened for you, because that is constantly being referenced. Whereas, many Bothans died for this it wasn't repeated. If Luke had been told that, and then later he'd met a Bothan who'd survived and was talking, in the bar, and was talking about like how tough the war had been for them. If they kept repeating that stuff, in the same way as I don't know, but that to me is the thing. Is it's repetition. It's like setting up a joke. You're trying to get into a rhythm with it. And maybe the world building of Dishonored was just because it was so dense in terms of it was constantly. And if I have a complaint about Dishonored 2, it is that there is an over-reliance maybe on the kind of the text logs and the audio log stuff, but I'm in no position to talk because I've done that myself. I totally understand how that happens, and it's again, it's part of that
Volume Substance
game.
Kickstarter 2017.
Exactly. 20 million target. We're gonna add 3 hours of cutscenes to Volume.
That game would be so good if we did that. We should do that.
We have to wait a couple of generations so we can do the HD reimagining. Sorry, not the HD, the 12K or whatever it will be by that point. It won't be 12K because that's not how numbers work. It'll be 16K.
No, every 4 levels we just give a cutscene. Like we've got like exteriors going on. Like you can see the revolution like starting.
Volume has a brief exterior scene. Doesn't it? Right at the end, you see him walking down the street. Best Unity asset store purchase ever. There, that was $20. I'm giving away our secrets. But yeah, no, I thought it was. I'm liking it so far. If I'm seeming vague about Dishonored 2, it's honestly because I've not played enough of it. I think we can probably have a better conversation about it next week once I've dug in a bit more.
Yeah, and as terms for me, I've been playing Battlefield a lot.
You love that game. Have you played the single player yet?
No.
I was watching a fantastic Super Bunny Hop video about the single player today, and I agree with all of it. It's really good. You should try it. Like, even if you only, just for me, do the American pilot mission and the tank mission. Both those just incredible. They're some of the best single player campaign I've seen in the game for a while.
For you, Mike.
Do it.
For you.
Great cutscenes.
And now it's time for what's going on at the studio. What's going on at the studio? Going back to the beginning of the show, we did a holiday update for EarthShape, adding the
quietly.
Yeah, adding the snow, adding the you call them fairy lights.
What are they called in the US?
I don't know. Just lights, Christmas lights, holiday lights.
So for any American listeners, fairy lights, it's the small lights you have on like a Christmas tree, or like those little. We call them fairy lights here. At least I think they do. This has now got me wondering if this is just a term we've used like in my family as a kid. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not actually. I'm wondering now. I'm wondering.
But this is different for us because we've brought up that Nick is now part of the studio, and he's doing these updates for EarthShape, and he'll be doing them for a period of time, and that's just different for us to have this consistent sort of update, because that's far more in the mobile vein than typically console. I mean, certainly if you're PC, you do a lot more updates as well. But yeah, this is new territory for us.
Just being able to give resource to it, I think that's the thing. Is so on PC you have the ability to go in, tweak things, fix things. And lots of games, lots of PC games definitely have like a year of rolling content. That's definitely something we want to do in the future. It wasn't possible to devote that much time to it on volume. Thomas Was Alone got some, but more as a side effect of doing console things, that we had to make kind of new exclusive content and all this kind of thing.
Because you have to plan for this stuff.
You really do. And it costs money. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So with EarthShape, we went in with this plan. We had, budget set aside of like, no, Nick is going to stick around and do these updates. And I'm really liking it, actually. I'm liking it. Well, I'm liking it because Nick is just great. I hope that came across on the episode he guested on. He's an artist, he's a coder, he is a designer, he's a bit of everything, and that is such a useful skill set to do this kind of work. But also, it's just fascinating being able to fix problems, and fix not just fix bugs and like big glaring problems, but just kind of tweak and finesse things. So we've done 2 updates now for EarthShape since it launched. The first one we did was just kind of we wanted to fix some stuff with the tutorial, because we saw in reviews players complaining that the game was too basic, or that they weren't getting to see much, and we realized that our tutorial could be streamlined to kind of get them to the content quicker. Because what I was doing in the chat was I was going in, because that's the other amazing thing, a feature I want across the board, which is you can reply to reviews on a Google platform, and you can go in and say, well, have you tried this? This is quite fun. And that would usually work, and we were seeing that, but obviously that's not a way to design a game, to constantly be explaining to people where the fun is in your game. So we went back and we kind of tweaked it.
You don't get it. You don't understand.
You don't understand my genius. You're not getting it. But what was interesting is when we did explain, and you do it because you want to kind of help them find the fun, because they've given you some money, so you want to make sure that they have a good experience. It's not about ego, but it's, we realized that we could do a better job of explaining that in the game. And we did, and we updated, and we got to see that the reviews started getting better for the game. We also, so that was incredibly exciting as a developer to be able to do that kind of finesse. But that was the sort of update you would do for a PC game, and we did. So Volume's a great example of a game which was, at launch, had a massive design flaw in it, this checkpointing system, which we'd missed, largely I think because we were playtesting with less experienced players. we weren't playtesting with the kind of the hardcore who would be playing it on PC, and that's an oversight that I will never repeat. It's always although it is always the checkpoint systems that I mess up in my games without fail. But you know, we could fix that within I think it was about a week after launch we got that fixed, and we saw that improve. So it's a similar kind of situation.
I'm looking forward to that conversation 2 years from now when we're having like
with the next big game
fight in the.
Mike, you are always wrong about this. And I won't have a comeback because the data is in. So to give a bit of explanation of that, with volume people, I think it's recent enough memory that people know that the checkpoints were kind of letting you kind of cheat your way through the game. That got fixed, and the game got a lot better as a result. Then with Thomas, though, Thomas didn't have any in-level checkpointing until about a month before I released it. Because I just didn't think you'd need it. And then as a result of putting those checkpoints in, it made the game significantly easier than it was meant to be. In the long run, the game being kind of accessible and straightforward definitely helped it. But yeah, there's a running joke that Mike can't design checkpoint systems. it's a problem for me. So I'm going to get better and better. On a side note, Dishonored 2 Save Anywhere. Absolutely brilliant in a stealth game. Every game should have it. It's brilliant. Love it in Dishonored 2, love it in Hitman. Every game from now on, please.
And Deus Ex,
that's a very good point. Oh goodness me, do I quick save often in Deus Ex. That's cool. So we do that anyway, and it's good to be able to do it on mobile. But this Christmas update, it's got, you know, a bunch of new things. It's got the snow in it. It's got the fairy lights. It's also got new gameplay mechanics. You know, we've actually been able to go in and go, you know, let's add about 20 to 30% more ways the game works. And we have been able to do that. And that's down to Nick's talent. But it's also down to how we design the game to be quite modular in that we could add to it because we always planned to. And that's great.
Easily my favorite cell in it. I love the collector cell. Like it keeps you on the board for a lot longer. So yeah, you're not. It's the thing I always scream in Battlefield, which is play the objective. Because in Battlefield, the thing that drives me bonkers is the people who are just sniping or killing or anything like that instead of taking the objective. And
the Overwatch Reaper problem, yeah,
and what I feel with the new cell is that it's not about just getting the ball like into the hole anymore. It's about playing the field and collecting the different cells that are on the field, and it fundamentally changes the game for me, and that's been great.
Well, and I think we can do more like that. So yeah, it's nice to be able to add that stuff in. It's nice to know that, you know, as I just said, like we're going to be adding more stuff over time. For us, there's two objectives here. One is to do seasonal stuff. Obviously, seasonal stuff does really well on mobile, but also it's just fun to do. We never want to, you know, cheapen the game or make it feel weird. But if you've played EarthShape, you know, having some snow on the planets makes sense within the context of the game. Having the Starseeker put up some fairy lights in his capsule absolutely suits the character and makes perfect sense for the game. So we're going to continue to do stuff like that kind of feels right for the game, but is also seasonal. And then we also are using it to expand the gameplay. And this update adds a lot of gameplay to the game. We're going to keep doing that. I think our core mechanics are strong. It's now just a case of expanding on things and, you know, maybe sanding off a few edges here and there. But it's going well. I mean, that Christmas update, we stealth launched it. I didn't say anything on Twitter. We didn't do any noise about it. We're actually going to do some things next week about this, to try and, you know, actually start promoting it a little bit. But for now, it's been stealth released with no support, and it's big bump in sales, so it's working. It seems the audience are digging it. The reviews are in and they're good. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I think we're on a path with these updates, and yeah, it's as we've kept saying throughout this, a lot of that is Nick just being a ninja.
1, 2, 3. I wanna thank you for reading mail again. Thank you for reading mail again.
Hey guys, new listener. Mike Thomas Was Alone is one of my all-time favorites, and I just got Volume, so I'm very excited to jump into that after finals. Anyway, I want to be a game designer at a AAA studio, preferably working on third-person action games or first-person shooters as a level designer. Cool. I'm currently enrolled in a university majoring in game design with a minor in computer science. I just want to know the best steps I can take to get hired by a studio, because all of the requirements for these big boys say I need to have years of experience in the industry. What are some essentials for a portfolio? Are internships important? Thanks for the entertainment. Keep up the good work, boys. Danny.
Yes.
Yes, right?
So that's good. No, I mean, the first thing to say is, Danny, it sounds like you're on the path. That's great. You're doing the right things. I'm just casting my mind back. So obviously, I'm a pretentious indie game developer now, but in a former life, I was working. I was recruiting AAA level designers, so I'm just working my brain back to that point. And I'm
curious. Let's go back quickly to the second question. Are internships important? Yes, they are. They
get a foot in the door. Anything that gets you in front of a professional who could either give you a job or recommend you for a job is important. Internships are great. Some studios have open days, things like that, where you can kind of get in the office, or they'll have kind of community events. The only advice I'd give on that part, because as you say, the first part of the question is the one with the big long answer. The one place I don't think you should be necessarily approaching about a job is at events where people are showing. So at GDC, my goodness, if you're able to get to GDC or any dev event like that, by all means, run around with your portfolio, find your heroes, show them what you do. That's great. But if you're at something like an E3 or a Eurogamer Expo in the UK or Gamescom, I've had people trying to show portfolios to me or to others at those kind of events, and to be honest, the problem you'll run into there is that either you're going to be showing your portfolio to a marketing person or a PR person who's not embedded with the team and therefore isn't able to help you, or you're going to be showing it to someone who's rushing to get somewhere and isn't going to be able to give you the time you deserve. So be careful with that, because you can, waste your time. But that said, like any opportunity you get to be around a developer in the UK, there's constantly these BAFTA events and kind of events where developers come and talk about their games, and there's usually a social gathering after. If you can get in a room in a casual environment with people who are making these games that you love, then be in that room. Internship is a way of doing that. Going to those kind of things and networking. Honestly, it's crazy to me still that you go to an event with I'm not going to name names, but like a big AAA creative director, say, doing a talk, and they'll come off stage and you'll go into the kind of the bar area after the event, and you'll see groups of people hanging out and chatting. You'll see students kind of gathered in these big circles, all chatting to each other, having a laugh, with the creative director stood, 20 meters from them on his own or her own, just having a drink.
Oh, that was
and you're like,
thing.
Students, walk over to that person. Go chat to them. Go if you want a job. That's the opportunity to go and say hello and be friendly. Don't be, all those kind of social cues. Don't be weird. don't be in their face. Be careful and moderate with how you talk to people. But that person is there to meet interesting, cool people, and maybe you're an interesting, cool person.
That was always the thing that weirded me out about Gamescom specifically. It was the only show where this was on the press side. So the way it worked was you would go into the room. It would be the devs, or even the studio head, and they would do the presentation for the game, and they would, then be done with the presentation, and everyone would just leave.
Yeah.
And the devs or the studio head was just left there, and I'd go up and I'd start talking to them, and I'd always get my stories from doing that. It was just it was such a bizarre thing, because that really doesn't happen at E3. It's
much more choreographed at E3, isn't everyone's shuttled to where they have to be. I think the thing is, one, and this is just a quirk of our industry, is I think obviously there's a lot of people who are maybe socially awkward or less comfortable going up to strangers. If you are able to do that, then that presents an opportunity, and on a cynical level, you can be the person who puts yourself out there and gets seen. Internships as well are a great way of doing that. I suspect most of those kind of internships are probably unpaid. So making sure that you're able to kind of survive that and live comfortably. I think I may have mentioned my views on not paying interns before, but frankly, if you want a job at those kind of studios and that's the only way they do it, then that may for now have to be the way you get in. It's not how we do things, and it's not how I ever want to do things, but if that's the battlefield right now, then that's how it's going to work out. Should we go to the first part?
Yeah. Essentials of the portfolio.
So, in reality, and this is weird that this has to be said, the best portfolio for level designers are levels. You often get people who are writing kind of synopsises of stories or ideas for mechanics or things like that. And frankly, the reality of an entry-level position as a level designer in the games industry is that you're going to be doing a low-level, boring job. Not boring, it's making video games still, but not, you're not going to be in charge of where should the next Halo be set. You're going to be in charge of how many crates should be in this level in Halo. Are the enemies spawning in an entertaining way during this moment? And those are the kind of jobs that you're going to be assigned. So those are the kind of jobs that the person looking at your portfolio is looking for evidence that you can do. So pull it back, I'll give some examples. So, one of the most impressive, CVs I saw, which did actually get someone an internship, it was an 8-page essay on the reason that the rocket launcher was placed at the specific point it was in an Unreal Tournament level. And it broke it down. It's, how the eye lines work towards that rocket launcher, what that rocket launcher was doing in terms of changing the flow of that multiplayer map, how the timing was set up in comparison to other guns in that level. All of this in-depth kind of analysis of why that choice was perfect, essentially. And, as a designer looking for, let's find someone who can place rocket launchers in our level, which is what you're going to be doing as a junior level designer, that was impressive. That was something where it's like, okay, this person can think. Ultimately, that's what you're looking for in a junior, someone who can think and someone who can learn. You're expecting a junior, I think I've said this on the podcast before, you're expecting a junior to not be great. You're not expecting to hire someone and be like, oh, wow, we've got Cliffy B here. This is great. You're expecting someone who will listen and learn and also be able to kind of develop ideas themselves and kind of take the initiative. So create those opportunities. Make mods, not mods necessarily, but levels. Make stuff that shows that you understand how games work and how you can work in a team. I would almost say that it's less impressive to show up with a full game of your own than it is to come up with a map for a specific shooter that you like, or to come up with a demonstration that you can do stuff with your own games. Try and come up with games that will showcase your ability to level design for your game. So with indie games, for example, like a roguelike maybe isn't a great way of showcasing level design skills. Obviously they take level design skills to make them, but you're probably not going to get to the point quickly enough. Whereas, a great example I once got was someone sent me a 10-level puzzle game, which was great because it showed really good level design skills. It was teaching me the mechanics really well. It was it was flowing well. It showed someone who understood how level design worked. That's really impressive. Mechanically, at that point, I was more involved in the recruitment of people for kind of more family games, more platformers, things like that. So obviously with AAA, maybe there's a requirement for action, but honestly, the key thing with any portfolio is consider what the person hiring you is looking for. Consider what they want. You're talking to an audience, and I think
the key thing for any portfolio is make stuff.
I agree to an extent. And yes, it will definitely, if you've got a level that you've made in your portfolio, that's a big win. But I almost feel like the thinking is more important, because I can teach you an engine. If you're smart and you know why the rocket launcher in a specific level is in a specific level beyond it's a cool thing, then I can teach you how to use my proprietary engine tools. Especially if you're going into AAA, these guys are not using Unity. They're using often their own engines. An ability to understand and make stuff is obviously massive, but I wouldn't sacrifice the ability to design levels in that. You know, if you're making a cool indie game and that's your only portfolio piece is a cool indie game you made, that's great, but that tells me that you can program rudimentary, you can get something finished, which are great useful skills, but it doesn't tell me if you can be a junior level designer. So that's the key thing, is work out a way to showcase that skill. And yes, sometimes that's making stuff and making maps for games. I'm not sure how easy that is anymore. Like, I know when I was a student, like, you know, you'd have an Unreal Tournament map in your portfolio. You'd have, you know, something made for those kind of games. I don't know if games are that modular anymore not that accessible anymore, that you can just make maps for them in a semi-professional way. Doom, for example, I know has a great editor.
Doom map creators.
I don't know how deep you can dive on that. I think you can't you? I've seen really specific stuff. So things like that, just being able to make a great Doom map, make these kind of things, and then it just becomes a case of how do you present that. Never assume that the person you're sending portfolio to has the game that they need. Don't assume the person you're sending your portfolio to has Doom. Send them the file, you know, so they can play it in Doom, but also send them a YouTube video. Why not send them a video which is you explaining that map, you almost reviewing it, where you're like, well, I did this, I made this choice because I don't know if it's the same in America, but in the UK we were always taught in maths or science lessons, show your working, right? Give us the answer, but also explain how you arrived at the answer.
No, it's a huge difference. I mean, just the difference between old man Slawinski. Oh, I'm about to have an old man Slawinski moment. Because I look at something, I hear something like this and I go, okay, for starters, you have more time right now than you will at any point in the future. So take advantage of that. The second one is when I was graduating university, I mean, to get a job at a television station, like, we had to send VHS tapes. Like, it was like a whole thing. And now it's just, I mean, if I was graduating, well, granted, there's no such thing as journalism jobs anymore. But if it's
a bigger topic than this podcast can contain, I think.
But, you know, I could have my entire YouTube channel right there with all the packages I did, all the work that I did.
Yeah.
It's like having something that you can just show with links, you know, or embedded videos, especially embedded videos. People will click videos. That is a human thing. Like, if you're a level designer and you have your video, like, you make some YouTube videos, if you send that to someone, probably going to click it, especially if you use a headline like, you won't believe what happens.
Stop it. No. Yeah, sharing video is cool. At that point, don't do
53 seconds is shocking.
Don't stop it. Don't do the thing I have seen where people make like their own proprietary website with their own videos embedded, but it only works on Internet Explorer, stuff like that. Just get it on YouTube, unlisted video, and just or if you're keeping it private, otherwise put it public.
Squarespace actually has great rates for students.
Yeah. But even then, I would say, honestly, like, stick to stuff that people can get to very quickly. Don't overthink it. Get the eyes of the person you're showing. I think it's better for you to make an amazing kind of 20-minute video where you almost do a director's commentary of a map you've made explaining all your choices than it would be to make a Squarespace website. Because a Squarespace website, there's lots of navigation, there's lots of stuff. Just get to the point. These people are incredibly busy, and you want to show them you can do the job as quickly as possible. A simple video will do that. And also, you know, include the file, so if they own Doom, they can run around in it. Just don't assume that. Or, you know, whatever game.
I got another student one here.
Do it.
Dear Mike and Alexander, this upcoming fall, I will begin my education in the University of Utah's game design program. Although I'm very excited for this opportunity as I am incredibly passionate about video games, I am also rather nervous as I am also incredibly inexperienced. I've actually played a regrettably low number of video games and have virtually no experience in computer programming or animation. I'm also aware that this industry can be competitive. I was wondering then, what you would suggest I need to do in order to prepare myself for my education and subsequent career. I will be spending a large portion of the next several months working to save money for school, so please bear in mind that the amount of time I'll be able to dedicate to such preparation might be less than great. Earnestly, Trevor. I actually followed up with him because I had some questions. First off, I was curious why he said regrettably low number of video games, and then the other one was, I was curious if the design program will be providing programming and animation courses as part of it. And he replied back, I guess I just worry I've been exposed to a very narrow realm of gaming, i.e. mostly what my parents were willing to provide for me when I was a kid, which turned out to be primarily Nintendo games. Nintendo games has amazing design in there. So
that's not bad education, is it? We'll talk about my background in a while.
Furthermore, because of various circumstances and lifestyle choices, I haven't actually played very many games to completion. I guess I just feel like there's way more in the world of gaming, even broadly speaking, referring to types of games rather than specific titles that I haven't experienced than that I have. And he says, yes, it does give general level programming and animation courses. That's good.
Which is going to be a useful. But it's a game design degree, right? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the first thing to say on the issue of not playing enough games, you are describing a fear that anyone who's deciding to have a career in games has. I'm going to give my background here. I think I've said this in interviews. I wasn't allowed. I know my mum listens to this podcast, so apologies, mum, if I'm misrepresenting you. But I wasn't allowed to play video games that much as a kid. Part of that was, we didn't have necessarily the money for lots of games consoles, but also, I think there was just a general feeling that they were a waste of time. I remember playing.
You showed her. Hi, Mom.
Well, it's going well since then. But I didn't have that background. I never played Mario as a kid. All this nostalgia for kind of SNES and Mega Drive stuff. To me, Mega Drive, I had a friend who had a Mega Drive, so I remember playing on that a bit, but not super experienced. And
I had friends likewise, only because they had an NES.
You specifically targeted friends based on their consoles.
Yep.
But I was not into video games as a kid at all. I didn't play them. I didn't have access to them. So there is an enormous swathe of knowledge of games that I didn't have. My first console I owned was a Dreamcast. And given that I'm 32, that's quite late. That's a late bloomer in terms of game interest. And thankfully, I got that chipped and I pirated all the games. So I was able to catch up fast. But what you're describing is not uncommon. I remember when I started my degree, I was very much a first-person shooter fan because I played PC games a lot. But then not the classics. I was playing Star Trek tie-in first-person shooters and things like that. But I was into Halo at that point. I was into.
What was that? A Voyager one? There was a
Voyager one called Elite Force, which was genuinely great. Which was almost kind of a total conversion of Quake. It was great. And there was also one called Klingon Honor Force. Klingon Honor Guard, which was a Klingon first-person shooter, that was a brilliant idea. Not executed brilliant. It was a little ahead of its time. It should have come out a little bit later, I think. But yeah, geez, someone needs to make another Klingon first-person shooter because it's the best way to do a Star Trek first-person shooter. But yeah, so I think that's a common concern everyone has, and to be honest, that's a concern I have now that I don't play enough video games. So you will always worry about that. You have to ultimately just get on with it. My suggestion to you would be, especially if money's tight, just go for breadth rather than depth. Play lots of demos. Play as much free stuff as you can. Just play games. But yeah, breadth is better than depth with this stuff. Just especially at your stage, play as much stuff as you can, and try and spend as little money as you can. So
I would also say keep a Steam sale fund, funnel a couple bucks,
you're right, save up, and then every Christmas
if you
sale,
save a couple bucks every day, and just put it aside. When the winter sale comes along, you can buy like half of Steam right there.
Yeah, exactly. So whatever you can afford, like that might well be a good use of your money. But also there are demos out there. There are ways to play games without spending money, and just buy demos, or like you say, like just crazy Steam sales, humble bundles. At the rate humble bundles are now, you can get 6 games a week for $1. You know what I mean? Like it's there are ways there of getting those games. You won't be able necessarily to get all of the AAA stuff the day it comes out, but you'll be able to get a sense. So I would go for breadth rather than depth. Don't worry about finishing things.
There's a lot of YouTubers out there that have good analysis videos.
Yep.
I've certainly brought up on the show before, like I'm genuinely waiting for a news person. But in terms of game analysis, Errant Signal, Super Bunny Hop, like they're
Game Maker's Toolkit is one that I'm consistently impressed by.
There are definitely folks out there doing really good analysis work, and
Extra Credits as well actually is an incredibly good for entry level kind of stuff. I mean, it's they also go into depth on lots of things, but they're a really friendly kind of presentation. So Extra Credits is a good one to watch.
Yeah, and in all of these, certainly take it with a grain of salt. Like there's some of these folks who definitely get up on themselves, but much like game designers.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't differ too much from the game designers themselves. No,
but that is another way of getting to see a lot of instead of having to play 50 games, getting to see the ideas and mechanics and concepts behind many games.
Yeah, it'll get you thinking, and ultimately that's all you need to do to prepare for this degree, I think, is just to open your mind up a bit and start getting into those thought processes. And then the advice I have for you when you're on the course itself is work as much as you can, work beyond the stuff that's in the lessons. So when you're getting the introduction to programming, that's great, but continue afterwards, continue to build those skills. One of the things with degrees is that if you just do, especially with game degrees, because there's so much technical stuff involved, if you just do what's in the syllabus, you're likely not going to rise to the top, and you're not going to be able to be in a position like the last emailer where you can create a great portfolio. So push yourself beyond that. Use your degree as a starting point. When a topic is discussed in the degree, that's great. Learn about that, but then go and explore that further. Always use it as a jumping off point. Again, that becomes a balancing act, and I can completely relate. I worked through university. I was doing 2 days a week working, 5 days a week university. I didn't have a lot of free time while I was a student. So I can totally relate to the, it's time is precious, and it's going to be a balancing act, but try and find those opportunities. And also, frankly, just the usual advice with going to university, remember to have like a good time at university, because it is an amazing stage in your life.
If you have a burning question about games, game development, or just about the complexities of the universe, you can send those questions to us via contact@BithelGames.com. That's contact@BithelGames.com, through the YouTube comments of this show, or on Twitter by pinging @MikeBithell or @Slowinski or @VolumeGame. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bithell Games Podcast. We can always use your support, so please provide reviews and 5 stars on iTunes, likes and subscribes on YouTube, and positive reinforcement on whatever other platforms you're hearing this show on whenever possible. This podcast was produced by Jonathan Downen. We'll be back next week. I'm Alexander Slowinski. Thanks again, and get in the last word, Mike.
Very light.